Hey, Ross World. So, you think you grew up rough? You think you grew up rough, huh? Okay. See, we use these excuses about how we grew up rough in rough neighborhoods and rough environments, and we use that as a base. We use that as an excuse. We use that as a reason why we're doing horribly now. Now, I'm not going to negate, I'm not going to forget, I'm not going to have selective amnesia on how I grew up. I grew up pretty darn rough, but I didn't grow up any rough than anybody else who grew up rough. Do you know what I mean? You know how some people tell you their story and that their story is worse than your story. Now, granted, I've heard people's stories and I say, well, your story is worse than mine. But most of the time, all of us has went through tragedies. All of us have went through some sort of chaos. I grew up in Southeast DC, where I believe that every night somebody was shooting their gun and it wasn't up in the air, it was at somebody. Southeast DC during the time I grew up was a very treacherous neighborhood. It was very, very dangerous. We went inside when the lights went off and we still had to duck when we heard gunfire. And I want to say it was almost like every night. My mother died when I was 12. My aunt, who passed away last year, took majority of care of me during that time with some other aunts and uncles. And I also grew up a portion of my life in the group homes that were sponsored and paid for by the Boys and Girls Club of America. So that is my story in a nutshell. Now, all through those trials and tribulations, those little snippets about when I used to go to school, people used to jump me because I was different. People used to beat me up because I was different or because I was bigger. You didn't even know all that. But see, if I told you my life story, some of you would say, oh man, that's pretty rough. Then some of you would say, nah man, I grew up even rougher than that. But I don't use that as an excuse of how I'm doing now. Now granted, some of us are blinded because your environment sometimes dictates, keyword, sometimes dictates how you will turn out. But that equation is not 100%, because if it was, myself and some of my friends, and even those people I graduated high school from, we will all be doing horrible. Most of my high school class are doing quite well. I don't really go on Facebook. I see them on Facebook and it seems as though they're doing well, and I hope they are doing well. Cardoza, senior class of 1997. I know, right? But here's my thing. We can no longer use our past. We can no longer use our history. We can no longer use our environment. We can no longer use our parents. We can no longer use our family. We can no longer use our schools as reasons and excuses of how we are right now. This is the thing I'm talking about, guys. If you're coming here for information, I'm giving it to you plain, I'm giving it to you easy, and I'm giving it to you in layman's terms, then apply it for your life. Because I've learned this information over years through classes and courses and through other people, and I've applied it to my life, and I'm doing a lot better than I was when I was younger. I'm doing a lot better, okay? So here's the thing. I grew up rough, but so what? So what if I grew up rough? The world doesn't care how I grew up. The world cares about a couple of things, and I can sum it up in one word: profit. Profit. Either you are running a business, or you're working for a business, or you're some sort of millionaire that somebody passed money down to. But majority of us, the world is only worried about one thing: profit. If you're bringing money to the business because you're doing a job, then they're going to pay you money. They're going to give you a paycheck. You can get revenue, correct? Or you're running your own business, and when you're running your own business, you're that entrepreneur, right? What do you worry about? Profit. Because even though somebody said, oh, I'm not really in it for the money. Yes, you are. Because even if you don't want a lot of money, you still need money to maintain and run your business and your way of life, whatever that is. You could be a minimalist, meaning you need the most minimum things to survive, right? You don't need that many things, but you still need money. And from that money, from your business, you need profit. You need to make sure that you're making more money than you're spending in order to keep that business running and to sustain your life. So I grew up rough, and I just gave you this quick little video to tell you that maybe I grew up rougher than you, and maybe you grew up rougher than me, because I've seen uncles shot that came inside the apartment that was bleeding. I've had guns pointed to my head. I've been robbed. I've been jumped. And I'm pretty sure millions of Americans, doesn't matter your color, your race, your ethnic, your creed, this has all have occurred to some of us in some sort of way. When I mean some, I mean a large portion, because we're not filthy rich. Most of Americans are at the middle class and below. Most of Americans. So if you're not high class and you've always been that way, or you work your way through the top, or even your 1%ers, or you're filthy rich, a lot of them have been through it as well. Even from people from other countries who are making it well now. They may not talk about it no more, but their closest friends, their family know where they came from. So just because you are where you are, don't think that somebody hasn't had worse cases than you, and now you're using your history, you're using your environment, you're using your upbringing and how you grew up as an excuse for not doing better. Because there's no excuse, because right now, right here, you are an adult. And in this day and age, with all the technology and all the resources, you virtually need no money to get your word out. If you have a cell phone, you can start a business. I wish I knew one that I could tell you, but hey, just Google it because you got a cell phone. This is Ross. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. I grew up rough, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you have too. But let me tell you something. Don't give yourself the excuse. Don't let no one else give you the excuse like, hey man, I know you grew up rough, so that's how it is. Or, hey sweetheart, you grew up rough, so I see why you're doing bad. Don't let none of them give you an excuse, because I won't. I'm out.